Lausanne, Switzerland,
Nice.
during the period 7th to 9th of June. Main days in the Olympic Museum there. So we've chosen, again, it's year 5 in its physical and virtual format to be in Lausanne. A lot of the international federations are based there. And it makes perfect sense, to hold it in their backyard. Fundamentally, it's moved from just knowledge transfer, which is where we were before, now to much more managed introductions with the content wrapped around it. And
Hi everyone, and welcome back to the Sporting Global podcast. And today I'm here with Dennis Mills. And Dennis, first of all, how are you? How's everything going?
We've got the sunshine in UK, which is almost unheard of. So it's good, and it's Friday, so that's great.
Absolutely. I mean, like, you always got to appreciate the sun. I know everything about that, living in Norway. But first of all, thanks for taking the time. It's going to be, a lot of fun, learning more about your background, a little bit of, what you're doing at MIE, and of course, the upcoming event that is happening very soon as well. But before that, I think it would be nice if you could share a little bit about your journey in the sport industry. Just take us a little bit, like, how you ended up, through your journey.
How did we end up where we are? So, it's a great question, and it's a question I'm asked quite often. So, keeping what is a very long story as simple as I can, around about 2000, I would say that there were a lot of conferences and expos sort of relating to sport, and it was a very confused market. And the bottom line was, when I had a look at this market, working in a fairly conventional large technology company, it felt to me that the sports events industry was not terribly professional in its whole approach. Now I'm not talking about the field of play, where clearly standards are amazing, but if you were talking about conducting whatever it happens to be, a regional games all the way up to an Olympics, it seemed that knowledge transfer was patchy, relationships were very tribal. There was not a lot of knowledge transfer. So an idea started to ferment in my mind. And by about 2005, we thought, right, there is a gap in the market here. And the gap in the market is between those organizing events and those that want to engage in that process. They could be the host cities or professional experts, or young people seeking a career path through into this industry. And it wasn't there. And that fundamentally is the model that MEI emerged with. People trying to do sports events on one side, people that need to interact, and we sat as a facilitator between those two parts. And that idea was, say, from 2005, and it remains front and center to the model that we've got in place today.
That's awesome. And I mean, like, I think it's you've been doing this now for like, what, for 15 years, and I guess, like, just first and foremost, just talk a little bit about the change, and I guess, like, the increase of demand that has happened then over the years, because obviously the industry's been growing tremendously, and it's like that impacted sort of like that gap that you saw.
Well, like, we all trying to claim the glory for things that we probably don't own, but but actually, I think a serious point is that when we wanted to set the company up, saying, what the hell is it called? And we tried to call it lots of, and we ended up with this Major Events International, which in itself is a very long title. Conveniently in Brazil, we were called May. Conveniently in China, we're called May. And of course, now people tend to talk about MEI. Now, the point of the story is that the term major events was not around at that time. And we, whilst you could never claim that you were the the originator of it, is kind of weird. And I remember sitting in a meeting in the lead up to London 2012, listening to a government minister going, and major events are so important, and I thought, wow, that, as I said, we can't put two and two together and come up with four, but so that gives you a kind of a feeling. It's a very distributed market. This lack of coherence. It didn't really have a name. It was called sport. Well, we're not a sport business. We are a business of sport business. So in that time, we've seen the evolution now to slowly, things getting a bit more professional and the like. And of course, we've seen, the recent pandemic, which effectively, if you take a round number in financial years, most companies, a 3-year big hole. And now where we're at, bizarrely, we've had 3 of our biggest years over the last 3 years. And we are going completely crazy now because things are being rescheduled, being delayed. They're moving geographically out of Russia into new cities. So our model of connecting both sides up the equation, giving them support in what has been a very demanding time. So I think, definitely this 2022 is going to be a hurricane year, but I think that the hurricane is going to continue for at least 2-3 years after that. So that's going to have some pretty profound implications for the industry as well.
And I wanted to I think it brings me a little bit back to, and for those, that are tuning in, obviously you're the CEO, at Major Events International. And since we're kind of in the whole, purpose of thinking a little bit ahead, I think it might make sense to just, go a little bit into the strategies, because obviously you're talking a little about where you're going here now. And if you wanted to map out a little bit, how is, I guess the pandemic, and this kind of hurricane that you're talking about, impacting, your strategies, talk a little bit about the strategies that you have, both short-term and long-term.
It's a very interesting question, because the way to describe the model, not necessarily in a time sequence, but in a physical model, take the classic iceberg, okay? When the business started, without going back over the whole history, we were particularly interested almost in geographic clusters. So we had the Football World Cup and Olympics in Rio, big focus on Rio, and then it was almost moving around in that way. And we thought that's all we could ever cope with, even if we'd been a huge conglomerate, which we weren't. We're a privately owned company. That would have been our view. What's happened, we were encouraged to get down into the federation world, and I'll just give you some numbers. There are about 150 international federations. Some of them sit in summer sports, winter sports, and other groupings. But in the summer sport area, there are 80,000 events that are happening over a 4-year cycle. So, simple maths, let's keep it simple. Even I can work this out, 20,000 in a year. So if you halve it, saying that that's not relevant, and keep halving, you would still end up with a huge number. Now, that's one of the myths of the market, that because people are so used to Olympics and Football World Cups in a 4-year cycle, they see the market as peaks and troughs, whereas we don't. There's a lot happening in those valley bottoms. So what is changing? Well, the whole bidding process has fundamentally changed. When you think that Brisbane 32 has been announced now, for an Olympics, probably contentious to say it wasn't a bid process, but in the conventional way we all were grown up in, it was gone. Number 2, big new infrastructure, billions and billions, maybe not gone forever, but fundamentally, again, when you look at, let's just jump to another one, to a Commonwealth Games, gone away from a city, which is their Commonwealth Games this year in Birmingham, to a state in Australia, Victoria. So there is a drive for cost reduction, a drive for incremental improvement in real estate and reuse of real estate, avoiding that term, the white elephants. That would be another, so if I go down the pyramid, a lot more events taking place. Those events are changing their format and their style. And the next thing, just to keep, answering this question as we evolve, is new formats are popping up all the time. New games. We just signed a partnership with World Obstacle, relatively new federation, but it appeals to youth, it appeals to city activation. It's got many good things going on about it. New formats, baseball or basketball. Basketball has a 3x3 format, street 3x3, not there a couple of years ago. So there's a lot of stuff happening where we were only looking at the pyramid before. We started to move down the stack, and as we move down the stack, there are new formats coming up to add layers into that stack. Doesn't need the infrastructure in the same way as it did before. doesn't need the same heavy bidding process in the way that it did before.
Right.
So our strategy, short term, is to very much focus on the day job,
Yeah.
but always looking over that horizon.
Right.
And saying, well, where are these trends going? What can we do to support cities? And if you don't mind, I'll stop at that point. But I think we do need to come back on the impact of cities, sustainability, youth engagement,
Right.
equality. There's a lot of stuff like that in there as well.
No, I think it makes a lot of sense, though, and I think it's very important. We probably have to touch upon it at the end as well in terms of like some tips that you have, because I mean, like, I think people are so focused on, like, as you were talking, almost about those cycles, right? Like every fourth year, kind of like living in that bubble, and then you kind of like, but there's nothing else. Oh, there's way more. There's way more happening, and a lot of opportunities if you're willing to go out there and take that.
Yeah.
But obviously, you mentioned both, kind of like a day to day, and obviously as the CEO, like map out like some of your, key responsibilities, some of the priorities that you're having right now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you're trying to play a bit of a human card, but it is a very, very serious point. It was on the 20th of March of 2020 that we closed the door of the office, saying, I hope to see you in a couple of weeks from now. Right. And that's genuinely the case, right? When we walked out.
Yeah.
And at that point, just going back in that recent history, you've got some pretty tough choices to make, which you'll have probably endured yourself.
Yeah.
Do you let people go? And we made a decision that nobody would face a salary cut, nobody would go onto the government so-called furlough program, and we were going to take this unique opportunity to reevaluate what we're doing, redefine ourselves, support our clients more than ever, and that's actually paid off for us. So the short thing to say is, a day-to-day basis, as a CEO, you have a responsibility to look after your people. They have bills to pay. Within the team, we have quite a young team as well as a more experienced part. They are driven hard. They're told that we are responsible for their personal growth and career growth. And so I take that very, very seriously. So the human dimension to me is very important. You expect me to say that every day you have to wake up and think about the money in and the money going out, and that goes with the job. But strategic oversight of the business and making sure your clients are happy, not you are servicing the clients. No, but are they happy? Are they getting what they want? Are you listening? So the role of the CEO is really to provide the X-ray facility, the oversight of the facility, to ask deep questions, not just take the, are our clients happy? Yes. Well, etc. So I believe my job is to lift the lid up and look under the lid and see what's really happening in the business, make sure the business is safe, whilst defining the strategy for what's coming up over the horizon.
Right, makes a lot of sense, and I mean, like, I think it's nice having that balance of a young and a more experienced team as well. How do you kind of like balance that out in a sense as well, to kind of like, different priorities, different standards. Talk about that, and especially from the younger side, I think it's important.
Yeah, this is, you put your finger on probably one of the biggest single challenges that that we actually face, is where is that balance. The way that we work it is that we run an internship scheme. We're fairly lucky that we have some relationships with some universities. All of our interns are paid. In some cases, obviously, they've got the university with the relationship with the university. But the bottom line is that people don't come for nothing. They're all briefed that they have the opportunity to prove what they can do and come onto the payroll. All of our stars come in that route. All of our stars are coming via that route. That's via the internship route, show what they can do, and occasionally when things were quieter, you might have a good quality. We don't keep the internship scheme going for a long time, but there'll come a time when we say, right, actually there isn't a role for you at the moment, but so we get the best of the best coming through that route. We will keep taking as many of those as we can. That makes sense. You do need, says he on the screen, I am a believer in grey hair. and experience,
Yeah.
you know, and because they have to ask the tricky questions. But it's a cliche but true that the challenge, you face bigger challenges bringing in an older person than you do a younger person.
Okay.
Because they know how to play, you know, I don't mean this in the wrong way, but they know
Right.
how to play the game. They know what
Yeah.
right things to say.
Yeah.
So on interview, that can be much more challenging when they first arrive. And so it is a really, really tricky dimension. I would say
Right.
that we are ratioed 50, 60% real first, second roles coming in
Yeah.
that route. Typically might stay for us for about 6 years. They're welcome to stay longer.
Right.
But you know, we occasionally we've said, look, it might be a good idea. You know, you might need to go to, you know, you've had such a good solid foundation move on. So
Yeah.
it is a tricky balance.
Yeah.
But you know, if I had to flip a coin, you would always go for people that are hungry, energetic, focused, intelligent, trainable, and take the hit on supporting them,
Right.
rather than getting a, it sounds awful to say it, an older person that, you know, change might be a bit more of a challenge.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah.
it's not a great answer, but it's the best one I can give
Oh,
you.
I mean, like, I think it's no, but I think it's important though to kind of like just talk a bit about
Yeah,
like the opportunity that you guys are providing, right, for the young people as well, to kind of like showcase that, okay, if you work hard and you provide results, that opens up, you know, opportunities, you know, for getting on the
yeah,
payroll, as you were talking about. And I think that's a very key thing, because I think a lot of people, you know, kind of the internship bubble has shifted a little bit in a sense of expectations on what is happening out of it. And obviously, you know, it's important to highlight that, okay, of course, like, you know, each company is different, like they have different, you know, kind of
for
budgets,
sure.
different kind of, you know, processes,
Yeah,
and different kind of
yeah,
elements, but that there are, you know, that it can lead, you know, to, you know, maybe part-time, maybe full-time job, and, you know, going in that direction. I think, you know, perhaps me and you, we have to have like a conversation, you know, behind the podcast, and just talk a little about managing teams. You know, I'm
yeah.
like I'm learning, you know, like I'm still in the process.
You never stop learning. Let me tell you that much. And
Exactly.
yeah, yeah, and it's one of the things we say to the younger team members, and it is a truism. I said you should be looking at everybody in the company,
Yeah.
and regardless of your experience, and say when you see a scenario, that is a great idea, or I wouldn't do it that way. And even when you're inexperienced, you will know your personal style. And I'm a fanatical skier, so I say to people that when I do a bad turn on my skis,
Yeah.
I know exactly why I did a bad turn. Well, you
Right.
know, my weight's in the wrong, but you know, I know that. So I'm now in the self-training mode. So
Mm.
when I'm doing things on a day-to-day, but I know what I do well,
Yeah.
which hopefully is some decent stuff. But I also know when I, you know, when I don't get it right. And what I say to them is, you should be sucking up as much good and bad experience that you will adapt to your personal style,
Right.
as you develop as a future leader, manager in this market. And as you can probably gather, I feel very passionate about this personal development
Yeah.
aspect, as one of our deliverables for
Right.
people that work with us in the company.
Right. No, I think it's a very important to talk about that, and it's a very key,
Yeah,
you know, aspect as well, with especially, you know, bringing in interns and understanding, okay, well, what are some of the key lessons that you're bringing with you, you know. And then obviously
yeah,
we'll talk more about that, you know, when we're getting a little bit closer here to the end. But talking a bit about, you know, obviously the Wholesale Federation Summit, you know, coming up shortly now, you
yeah,
know, it's very shortly it's happening. Talk a
yeah.
bit about the key purpose behind the event, and I guess, like, what do you plan the participants to gain from it?
Yeah, so we're talking about a return to a physical event in Lausanne, Switzerland,
Nice.
during the period 7th to 9th of June. Main days in the Olympic Museum there. So we've chosen, again, it's year 5 in its physical and virtual format to be in Lausanne. A lot of the international federations are based there.
Yeah.
And it makes perfect sense, you know, to hold it in their
Sure.
backyard. Fundamentally, it's moved from just knowledge transfer, which is where we were before,
Yeah.
now to much more managed introductions with the content wrapped around it, and
Mm.
leaving more time for one-to-one engagement. I mean, the market we operate in, I didn't make this point at the beginning,
Right.
other than to say it was very fragmented.
Yeah. Yeah.
It is important, certainly for your, your younger community listening to this call. This major sports events market, which we've said now isn't the sport,
Yeah.
is very relationship driven, very, very relationship driven.
100%.
Yeah, the geographic boundaries make absolutely no difference whatsoever. Slight exaggeration, but we all know each other. That clearly is not possible, but and so to some degree, yes, that summit is a manifestation of that. So we'll look at broadcast, we'll look at technology, logistics, travel, all the support services that go into an event. But also the international federations are briefing the cities on what they want. The cities are saying why they should host. The federations are briefing commercial companies why they should get involved. The commercial companies want to speak to the federations. They want to speak to the cities. So we create a melting pot. We bring people into a place, one time, different formats, dinners, drinks, workshops, panels. But, it is about people connectivity and building that relationship and getting those insights to how best to move them on. So we refine it. It's going online. So again, I think we could do all if you'd like. Here's an offer I hadn't thought of. My team will probably kill me. But if you have got sort of the graduates out there that, of course, are so poor they can't even afford Heineken, I'm sure we can give them a free pass to listen in on the summit if they'd like to do that, because it is accessible remotely. And it is catch up. So the networking platform is open for a week before. It's open for a week after if people are in the wrong time zone. We have people flying from Australia to the event, right?
That's awesome.
So they're not having a problem with time zones. But obviously, there are colleagues in Canada, North America, South America, whatever, that might benefit from listening in. So the summit, it's got its own DNA. It's not a conference. It's very much around this relationship business.
Well, I'm sure. I mean, like, we have a very young audience. I'm sure they're gonna appreciate that, and we'll make sure to do like another, newsletter or something with that, special, I don't know, link or promo or whatever you want to do with that. So we can get that out and benefit all the users, in the Sporting Global platform. And yeah, I mean, like, I think it's a great opportunity, and especially these days too, it's like if you don't have, the opportunity to go there, physically, take the opportunity to tune in, listen, and you kind of have to be digital these days anyways.
We it's an interesting point. We're very lucky we have a partnership with a company called IDG in China. They're actually a global company. It's an American company by heritage. But actually they've been doing digital events for years, and we have an Australian partner that delivers ours called Events, and we have a very good production company called Gigabox. So it's a team between the three of us. When that pandemic kicked in, in March, we had a physical summit planned, and we went from that walking out in March to June, where 1,400 registered people, 64 countries. We'd never worked together in this way before. So we are seeking it to be big ambition to be the world's best at hybrids event. Right. So we are hammering the use of the networking tools, virtual exhibiting, people asking questions online. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be perfect, but it's a journey. This is a trend that's not going to go away.
No, and especially also like after, like, I guess in a sense, was we're getting a little bit into the new normal or more back to kind of like how things were, like I see it as well. Like, it's just, if you don't have that, digital options or presence, it's going to be really hard, because people now kind of like also got used to, doing things from home, or like, working from home, like participating at events. Like, it just like, became as part of your life. So I think also like that barrier to go kind of like outside your doorstep now is even harder, maybe in a sense, than it was. And so if you don't facilitate for that, then I think you're going to lose quite a big portion of your audience on it.
Yeah, I think it's a very fair observation. And again, you put your finger on one of the major debating points, that's out there. I was more old school than you could possibly recognize before. All of our events were physical, and we kept the numbers down to about below 250, around a 250, to keep the intimacy going. And that absolutely allowed us to carve out our DNA. So good.
Right.
But obviously we had to traverse into this, pivot, whatever, into this model.
Right.
But I was shocked by how effective it was and how good the feed. Now, there are always going to be those that think this is a terrible idea, and those are, etc. My view has remained exactly what you said, because let's just touch base a little bit why as well.
Yeah.
Is that people like myself were 13 kilograms heavier before the pandemic because my life was spent up in the sky, right?
Right.
And, we were in the airport lounge before it. Of course, you had the glass of champagne on the plane. Of course, you went out for dinner for clients, and you reversed the same process, went home for a couple of days, and then did the whole thing again.
Right.
And to some degree, wise partners, boyfriends, girlfriends, the rest of it, it went with the job that's you had to be at these events. And certainly now with people with lifestyles changing, they will make more choices about what ones they go to. And bosses with budgets will say, yeah, I know you'd have normally gone to those 5. These are the 3 that matter. So for all of those reasons, yes, there's going to be Zoom or Teams fatigue. Oh, not another online event. But that is why you heard me say, that I have to raise the bar as a business and accept it will be imperfect until people really, really, really get into it. And it won't matter that we have 1,400 people registered. What we want is 400 that are engaged, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't want to keep going on about it, but this is going to be contentious for years. It is an evolution. We are bought into it.
I mean, I just wanted to make one point, I guess, before we move on here, and that's essentially just the point as well. When obviously, we're a startup, we're kind of like a young company here, and I mean, I remember kind of right before the pandemic, we were traveling a lot. 2019, I traveled probably half the year, everywhere, talking with clients, talking with partners, talking potential, partnerships and all this stuff, and you kind of almost felt obligated in a sense to go. People kind of were expecting you to be there.
They do.
Right?
Yeah, they absolutely
and I said we don't have that money, to kind of go. Be there. If we go, we have to make sure we get something back, out of it. It has to be at that point. And so I mean, for us, in a sense, the pandemic just opened so many doors in a sense, because we can do everything digitally. And people didn't expect us to come, come meet us in Switzerland, or come meet us in Spain, and people were like, okay, no, it's fine. And people realized as well, you can do business digitally. It's no problem about it, and I think people realizing that and seeing that was a great opportunity, and it saves companies also a lot of money, which is
and I did touch on it briefly. I think it's a word only that. You were asking about trends in the market. Everything I'm saying obviously is to paint the picture rather than be entirely accurate. You asked about the trends before. I would say 18 months. Don't ask me why this is the case, but 18 months, 2 years ago, the word sustainability was treated like I'll plant a tree for every air mile I fly. It was not sustainable. That is fundamentally changed. Cities now hosting sports events demand that sustainability is treated seriously, and in fact federations often have people hired to do that. So of course it will have a flippant throwaway currency with some users, a bit like, not virtual events. But I can tell you it has been treated very seriously.
100%.
And so that aligns with, I don't need to come and see you. So rather than going, I don't think you're serious about the meeting, now, I'm not saying it's an excuse, but you just, it is, people accept that traveling for a 30-minute meeting is just not a great idea,
Right. And I think it's just, just that acceptance, right, that kind of happened. It was a good switch, both for the environment, both from sustainability approach, and also, just
lifestyle, the whole lot.
And so before obviously the event begins, it's happening very soon, is there any like, key announcement or something you would like to share, with the people?
Yeah. We've gone a bit nuts recently, so you're probably going to get bored with all the key announcements coming out. So we put out a press release. I can't remember, was it this week? I think maybe.
Yeah.
We've signed a collaboration deal, like a JV, with a company called Sponsor Force in China.
Nice.
They have access to brands and basically cash sponsors, right?
Right.
And that is something that they demand. We have just signed this support package with World Obstacle, and that is, if you guys, the younger element of the audience, have a look at them. World Obstacle doing some fantastic stuff, tying up with other federations, new sport. So that press release is going out very shortly. We're very proud of our relationship with the Motorcycle Federation, FIM. We probably need to get a press release out about them, and we work with a global travel destination partner, ATPI, and their press release about their collaboration, which we facilitated, will be going out. So yeah, there's a hell of a lot going on. In the final thing, perhaps for the more techie guys on this podcast, is save the date for something like the 15th, 16th of November, LA, USA. There is something you can check out called the Sport Entertainment Alliance in Technology.
Nice.
You can't remember that. It's called SEAT, Sport Entertainment Alliance in Technology. We are absorbing that into MEI, and probably in a high-tech stadium in LA. I think it's in that window, 15th to 17th of November. We will be bringing our major events type summit to merge, integrate with the very strong tech venue focus around it. So there's you can see we don't stand still. There's a lot going on,
Never stops.
But those are some of the headlines that are coming up.
Awesome. Well, that's really exciting. And before we kind of, I guess, like wrapping up here, you touch a lot about, kind of like, I guess from the standpoint of, always learning, kind of like, keep looking at yourself, kind of like growing. What tips do you have, for now, like for students, professionals looking to get their foot in the door? Like, what are some key advice you would provide?
And that is the killer, right? Getting the foot in the door. I mean, internships are one of these other contentions. I'm a passionate believer in it. But check out as an intern what they would ask you to do. If you're counting the photocopying paper, wrong organization, so an interview with an intern should always be a two-way process. So getting your foot in the door in this industry is the problem, right? So if there is a sport event in your city or region, get involved with it as a volunteer. Why? Because the sponsors are there, the delivery companies, the federations are there, and in life you have to make your own luck. So being seen, getting the opportunity to bump into people. If it's down the conventional internship route, great. If it's down the volunteer route, great. But start building in this market, start building your credentials and be proud of the small things that you've actually done and work it hard. It is a specialist market. To dip in and out, people wouldn't treat you very seriously. And I would say, therefore, put your cards on the table, as we would say. Declare your interest, take a risk occasionally by doing something, and create your own luck. It all sounds cliched, but I met a young lady, as it happens, at the Pan American Games surfing in Lima. Immensely impressive. Big badge that she was wearing. And I thought, wow, this lady's really impressive. She must be one of the tech company deliveries. No, she was a volunteer. And I spoke to the tech company afterwards. I said, hire her. I said, well, and so she was in the gear, right? She looked the part. She was in a role, clearly enjoying it. So I'm afraid it's a very long-winded explanation, but it's a great market to be in. It's a great market to be in, sport is interesting. So when people look over my shoulder, on trains and planes, and they see, all the symbols and logos, probably like you're seeing here, say, wow, and say, look, we don't run them all, right? But it's a fun market to be in. It's interesting. My days are very dull, very rarely dull,
100%. Well, with that, Dennis, I would like to thank you, so much for taking the time, for sharing your insights, sharing some of your strategies, like some of the cool things that you guys are working on. And for those of you, that have been tuning and listening all the way at the end, make sure to like the video, subscribe as well, and sign up at sportingglobal.com, and we have some opportunities for major events, international internship opportunities that you can apply on there as well. Follow their page, connect with Dennis and the team, and make sure to get your foot in the door. And before we wrap up here, Dennis, I don't know if you're aware, but on the Sporting Global podcast, we kind of have a little bit of a tradition or a challenge to all our guests that we're having. So, I have to do it to you.
Go.
All right. So I have to teach you a little bit Norwegian. That's
oh my God. Go on.
So with every video we do, we always finish with "Vi snakkes," which means see you later in Norwegian. So that's what you have to say.
Vi snakkes. How close am I?
Vi snakkes.
Vi snakkes.
There you go. Perfect.
Hey. I didn't tell you this. I should embarrassingly be better than that because I spent a lot of time in Norway many years ago. So
there you go. It was top on. Top notch.
Yeah, not to be repeated. Another.
All right. Thank you so much, Dennis.
All right. Well, it's been great to speak to you, buddy. Take care.
Likewise.
Thank you.